Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, Ben Furimsky returns to the podcast. Ben updates us on his most recent fishing adventures, takes us behind the scenes of the fly fishing shows, and lets us know what to expect for the 2025 season. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And a shout out to our sponsor, Trout Routes. It's a fact, none of us get to fish as much as we want. Almost overnight, planning a fishing trip went from a gazetteer and word of mouth to the entire internet. There have never been more resources available for fishing, but it's a challenge trying to wade through the digital noise to find the most current and relevant information. Spend less time surfing the internet and more time on the water with Trout Routes. With over 350,000 access points, mapped across 50,000 trout streams and much more, Trout Routes has all the data you need to help you make the most of your time on the water. Where I fish in southern Appalachia, figuring out how to get off the water can be as important as finding it in the first place. With Trout Routes, I can mark the best spots to get out of the water so I don't find myself in a valley I can't climb out of as the sun goes down. Up your game and download the app today. Use code ARTFLY20, ARTFLY20, all one word, for 20% off of your Trout Routes Pro membership at maps.troutroutes.com. Now, on to our interview. Well, Ben, welcome back to The Articulate Fly.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And, before we dive into all the show stuff, I bet you have a few recent fishing adventures you can share with our listeners.
Yeah, I actually just got back early yesterday morning about, I don't know, I'd have to say slightly over 24 hours ago. I was just getting home.
Yeah, you were down in Argentina, right?
Yeah, we went for golden dorado. So most people, when they think Argentina, are usually thinking trout, but we were down there fishing for golden dorado and something different for Argentina. And it was a pretty awesome trip with set fly fishing.
Yeah, those are good guys. It's kind of funny. I fished with them back when they were Andy's Drifters, like in 2006, when Gustavo had just started the company.
Right. And now they've actually, with Set, they've merged. Two companies merged, and they were actually giving me a little bit of the background on it. And it's the third iteration of the company, and they've exhibited with us all along the way. So the shows are a great place to meet them, and that is one of the reasons we even went with them. Is everybody was like, "Oh, those are great guys," and I would have to say, any fishing trip is always fun for a lot of different reasons. And I tell people one of the benefits of coming to book a trip at the shows is that you get to talk with the people, and you can have a great fishing trip with bad fishing and a bad fishing trip with great fishing. And the difference is always the people that are around you. And when you get to talk to the people at the shows and meet them rather than just, communication online, you may even be talking to your guide and be like, this guy is great. I would have a good time fishing with him. And no matter what it is, that you're going to have a good time. And that's what everybody said about the guys with Set. So we were excited to go with them, and they were, the hosting and the food and all the things besides the fishing were highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'm kind of old school that way too. I would never put a deposit down on a trip without spending time, in person if possible, but certainly on the phone with the guide or the outfitter.
Sure. I don't think it's old school. It's just that it's the best way. It's the best way. Even that's how you make friends, and that is how people get to understand that they get along and their humor or whatever it might be. And, someone that you might have a great trip with could be someone different than me, or it could be, the same. And, there's people that get along with different personalities. When I was guiding full time, some of my employers, when I was guiding for them, the outfitters that I guided for the shops, one thing that they would say about me is that they're like, well, I can send anybody with you. It doesn't matter their personality or their skill level. You're going to give them a good trip. And then there's other great guides. It's nothing against their guiding skill level or their abilities, but they may have a certain personality that's going to have a better trip with them. maybe they're a little more rough around the edges. So, someone that needs pampering might not have a great trip. And it's nothing against that guide or that person, but you need to make sure you match the personalities well. And a good outfitter is going to do that with their guides. And, you can do that yourself when you're looking at that outfitter. And that, I don't think that's old school at all. It's just smart.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the price tag is pretty high, so I kind of try to put my time in. But you got some striper fishing in too after the symposium, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we usually go every year, and it's time when I get to, I'm back in New Jersey for the symposium, so I visit my family that they live 2 hours away from where the show is. So I go down and spend a little time with them, and maybe get Thanksgiving in and get back to my roots in striper fishing. So we did a trip right after the show with a couple of the tires and did a day in Point Pleasant area and had some good fishing. Fish were being a little fussy that day. There was bait everywhere. So they had, it was like basically they could just literally open their mouths and have a snack when they wanted to. There was so much bait. So I heard from plenty of fishermen that day was a particularly challenging day, but we caught fish, and then I got a few more days in myself before heading to Argentina.
Yeah, but you can't always catch the cover picture for the Edison webpage every time you go out, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And, so it's kind of funny. We're heading into the holiday season. And so, anglers are like, hey, we're going to go to fly fishing shows in early 2025. But I think people don't realize that, for you, it's pretty much a full year thing to put on a show. And you're even planning probably for 2027 at this point. Can you give folks a little bit of a feel for, what your year looks like?
Yeah. I mean, I'm even negotiating schedules right now for 2028 as far as facilities. So that's usually the first thing that I'm working on. And that can be years out. And sometimes it can be where facilities don't take contracts, but they'll put it on hold. And then, I have dates on hold. And then when it opens up to receive contracts, I'm doing that. So it's kind of a timely process. And, a challenge that I've been facing that's literally added months of work to my schedule is once we lost our facility in Denver during COVID and moved to the Gaylord, our new facility. They're challenged to get consistent dates. They basically won't give me the same weekend, which means that I may have to go back and renegotiate other contracts and work out a schedule. So that's really stressful in the long term. After we get those done, then it's working on individual contracts and getting exhibitors. So we'll start, I'm starting to work on the contract that we send to our exhibitors now, so we can have that provided by next month. So when we start the shows, exhibitors will have a contract and schedule available for the 2026 dates. And then we'll start receiving contracts, as early as that's out, like in January for the following year. So the season literally, our work schedule overlaps from as we're producing and going through the actual events live. For 1 year, we're starting to get contracts and make sales for our exhibitors for the next year. And, that's always a challenge, as far as like people's, budget schedules and things like that. There's things that we got to work with, and it's different schedules for like some of the big corporate companies and versus small individual ones. And, one might have plenty of funds, but they have they got to wait till their budget comes out. And then another one may, not have any money right then because it's a small little company and they're in the downtime on their season. But the shows are vital to them. So it takes time to line that stuff up. And in fact, that's been a critical factor that we're still recovering from since COVID, as far as getting timely contracts in, because that affects the next step, which is putting out schedules and lining up speakers and celebrities, because some of them may coordinate with, pro staffs, and they're waiting to find out if their companies are going to be there. That, so we try to use celebrities that may work with our exhibitors, because that helps everybody and completes what I call like sort of, their marketing circle. I've got their speakers, and then it drives people back to their booths to ask questions. They make more sales, and, it helps everybody work out a more successful event. And, and then after that, we work on destination theater and authors booth schedules and things like that. So it's a year-long process, full time. A lot of people think like, oh, this time of year, usually I get it in like sort of November, like, oh, I bet you're starting to get busy. And I'm like, yeah, for next year.
Yeah. But, the good news is, you've got a great team of people that help you kind of behind the scenes. You want to give a shout out to some of those folks that maybe people may not know, but are kind of critical to, making the fly fishing shows a success every year?
Well, yeah. I mean, we actually have a small staff. I mean, I've got basically 3 people that work full time. Rob Parkins was new with us last year, so he's still, learning stuff. With something like we do that has, like, as I just explained, it's a multi-year process at times. It could take a couple of years till someone's sort of quote unquote trained and, able to go through stuff pretty seamlessly. So he came on last year and was working with us in a bunch of stuff, and has definitely been a huge help on site. Having someone else that can be responsible for, putting out fires and working out problems with exhibitors and booths and things like that happen during setup. Emily Mowry works with us doing our social media, and she runs the front office. She's, for this year, she was out for a bit of time because I'm not sure if you're aware, or your listeners, but in one of the hurricanes that hit Florida, she wasn't even in path of the hurricane, but there, often with hurricanes, there can be outlier tornadoes, and a tornado hit her street and ripped the roof off of her house. So she's been homeless for, now they're living in an RV they just purchased, for temporary housing, but she was homeless for a little while. And of course we weren't expecting her to be on top of work and dealing with her life because it was turned upside down. I mean, she's still trying to get insurance coverage. And that was when were those hurricanes? In October. So, I mean, it's a nightmare dealing with insurance for that kind of stuff. So we started a GoFundMe. You can look that up for her and pitch in some funds to help her out, because she's been with us for decades and, a longtime staff member. Jen Barkman runs our office at home. And then Amy Barkman works part-time with us. She's her sister-in-law and, works in the office as well. So those two are critical to some of the other, contract processing and fly tires and, just the stuff that happens in the office behind the scenes and taking care of paperwork. So yeah, it's a small staff. I mean, like, I will talk to some friends that just happen to work in the event world, in the corporate world, and they may put on an event that for whatever big company it is that is the size of one of my events or smaller, and they will have a team of 10 for that one single event. So they can't even believe that we're able to produce 7 events with 4 people. And, that's just the difference between the corporate money that they have and us trying to run a small business. So it's, it's a lot of work. And that's the reason why there's basically nobody, there's like one other person that does a few shows in the country in our industry. So, people come and go all the time, and there's lots of wonderful smaller events. But as far as like the scale that we do, that there's a reason why no one else does it. It's a lot harder than people realize.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine, Paul's still helping you too, right? With kind of set up on locations and things like that, right?
Yeah. Paul's our shipper. And he takes care of all of that stuff. And then he does he's in charge of some AV stuff and in charge of setting up our ponds at the event. So he's kind of a, independent guy, but he works with us through the events and takes care of all the shipping for us as well as exhibitors independently. And, that is a critical role though, because the shipping, what I tell people is he takes away the stress because we're all in it together. If you're shipping with him, he may or may not save you money, but at the very least, if you ship with him, he takes care of worrying about tracking your shipment and finding out that you are going from, Boston to New Jersey and your booth's sitting somewhere in Texas because they screwed up shipping. And then they're like, oh, well, we'll get it to you on Monday. Don't worry about it. And you're like, you don't understand. I don't need it on Monday. I need it Thursday. If I get it on Monday, I'd miss the whole event. And, I've dealt with that myself because I'm also a vendor at the shows. I own a separate, my side hustle is the angling bookstore, and I exhibit at the shows. And I've run into that myself. So it's, that's hugely stressful when, a shipping error happens when you're dealing with a 3-day event. You can't get your stuff on Monday. It's not like, okay, well, your Christmas gift or your birthday gift's going to be a little late. Sorry about that. It's your livelihood that it depends on this weekend. So that takes a lot of stress out.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think probably most of the consumers don't know. It's almost like you've got like a mini rock tour going on, right? Because you basically have a tractor trailer that, for people that are doing,
2 of them.
Yeah. I mean, you've got people doing multiple shows. What happens is they get their stuff to the first show. And then, you and Paul help them move it around. And so literally what happens is they show up, 3 shows in, and their crate is sitting outside of their booth for setup. And then they pack it up and it gets moved to the next location. And then they just take it home with them for the last show. And that's a lifesaver for people that, because you're literally coast to coast. I mean, no one wants to drive that in their truck, right?
Right. No, there's a few people that sometimes do. They just like to drive and don't like to fly. And then sometimes they'll work with a few of their buddies and be like, hey, I got a big van. I'll haul my, give me some gas money. I'm going to drive to the shows anyway. And they kind of do their own little shipping thing. Eventually that even, gets challenging for them because they run into a situation, with a breakdown or something like that puts them into a situation that stresses them out. So, with the semis, we run into that too. But again, we're all in the same boat with it. So if there is a breakdown, there's everybody sitting there. Well, we know our stuff's going to arrive late. We're all going to be here late together. So let's go get lunch and we'll come back and set up. So it is that is a great way to kind of, make an analogy like a rock tour. We do. We're all in it together. We're all hanging out together. That's why we call it the show family, because we spend a couple of months together, basically full time, and everybody gets to be pretty good friends. But there's a few customers that will travel around and they go, and they have a great time. It sounds like an awesome thing to do, but they'll have like a group of guys. And they go to a different event every year. They may go to their home show, but then they pick a different one because they realize the differences in the shows, or a speaker a celebrity they may want to see, or something, that's just different. And every show is a little bit different, but there are, core components that are the same. And they'll travel around and pick one. And it's like a little mini vacation that they go somewhere, or maybe tied in with something else. Or we have people that travel for work and they're like, oh, I'm going to be, they may know our show from New Jersey, but they're in Denver for work. And they're like, hey, I'm going to stay the weekend and go to the show and see it there. So it's kind of cool. And they may have a sense that, the differences, but would never expect a customer to realize like the logistics and the transportation, because we have exhibitors that don't even realize sometimes that we have multiple events. I have no idea how they don't, but they don't even realize that we have these multiple events because it's listed all in the same contract, but they're just so used to doing their home event that they don't even realize that we have multiple events, and they have no idea of the logistics behind it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I went back kind of preparing the questions for this interview, and I was shocked to see that you were on. I've talked to your dad in between, but the last time you were on was in early January 2020 before COVID. It's,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's interesting. And it's, the funny thing is you were mentioning earlier, I think probably you were saying that people had a tendency now to hold contracts because of COVID, because they didn't want to like put money out and then have the show postponed. But, I've seen changes just in kind of the way, B2B shows as well as B2C shows have done. What are you seeing kind of on your end that are kind of, you think are going to be things that are going to kind of survive and change the way we do business kind of post pandemic?
That's a great question. There has been no industry that was more affected by COVID than the events industry. I mean, I'm in the business of bringing a large group of people together. And during the pandemic, everybody was basically saying, don't go to large groups of people. So, I mean, I was fighting against, everything there, we were proponents of health, and we want everybody to be safe. And in fact, we always had, those of us that run the full show circuit, there's always, something that goes around. And we were hopeful that due to the pandemic and due to COVID, that we were going to see less of those people that are like talking to you and hacking, and they're saying, oh man, I'm super sick. And you're like, well, why are you here? Like, we're working and you're coming here super sick. We're excited that this show is this important to you, that you want to come see us when you're super sick, but you're getting us sick. And there was always like, the hopes of what may or may not go around every year, as far as like, a sickness that might catch through the crowd. And the funny thing is, the year after COVID, the first year we returned to live events, was literally the only year that I can remember in history that with our events that 0 people said they got sick. Nobody said, I didn't talk to a single person that said, I got sick after X and X show. Whether it's just a common cold, which, that's typically what it is, or flu or anything like that. Not a single person did. And we don't remember, no one also remembers people coming in sick. So it did kind of set a better standard for people to not come if they're sick, and I think I've seen that change from people at work, but I was hoping, it's good and bad. I mean, the U.S. has a pretty hard work ethic, and we'll go to, and also a poor policy for days off. So you kind of get forced into going to work when you do feel bad. You're like, I got too much to do. I got to go to work. I don't have enough days off, whatever it is. And people go to work and get their colleagues sick. And I think now, and I hope now that has improved, it's easier for people to say, hey, I'm sick, I'm not coming to work. But also on your recreation side, that should be considered. And, so that's the positive. We see less people, customers, coming to the show feeling bad and getting us that are working sick, because that it's just that they're excited to go, and we can't blame them for that. But I think that their thought process is a little smarter on that now, because they realize, like, hey, we're there working, we got to go the next weekend, we're working long hours, we're exhausted, we're vulnerable. And I think that's a positive that's come out of it. The negative, like I said from the start, is that they, it was the whole thing with events and, public events. What a lot of people don't realize is that, aid and things like that went out in the events industry, we got little to nothing, or it's based off of your months of operation. So the events that we had, when shutdown happened was just after we finished our events, fortunately, for the season. So we got in 2020, and then things shut down, weeks after our, everything was like happening right as our shows were finishing. And then things got shut down. So when they posted aid, it was based off of your revenue generated during the months when it was closed. So we were making no revenue then. So we basically got no aid. And really, as far as events go, Hollywood and Broadway were basically all that got aid. So we work off of like this schedule that you talked about earlier. So it's a perfect question you asked based off of how we operate. And, I knew like restaurants and things like that closed for a couple of months and got, $1 million, and they came back and they were able to open up under restrictions. We're still like, my hopes are to be recovered by next year and back into normal operating, because not only did the virus and the health precautions for that affect us for 2 years after, until people were feeling safe and it became more of a less of a health threat than it once was, for multiple reasons. But also the effects that we all saw with things like distribution, shipping, all of those things delayed things for over a year with our shows. I mean, some countries still had restrictions longer. Companies were trying to catch up on production. Some companies made, big errors. And no matter what your industry was, I had people at the shows that, saw error. You were talking about errors that were in their industry, and saw fly fishing companies make it where, it might have been based off of sales and production or forecasting that was almost impossible. Like, I am still looking, as far as forecasting, I still look back to 2019 and 2020, because you can't really look at like what happened 2020, 2021, and definitely, into 2022. After that, maybe some things were starting to normalize. But, if you were looking at your sales in 2021 to forecast 2022, I don't care what you were in, it's going to be off, because we weren't able to shop in person. We weren't able to go try on clothes and, test our fly rods or pick up a reel and wind it in our hands. It was like all online. And also a lot of stuff was sold out because people couldn't get it, and some shops canceled orders because they thought it was going to be terrible. And then other shops kept their orders in and sold everything, and they couldn't get fill-ins because sales skyrocketed in fly fishing because people wanted to be outside. But at the same time, our side of the industry, we couldn't operate. We were closed down, so we couldn't do an event, or we had to do very strict precautions. And, so it's taken a long time to basically recover. But, also in that, like on our business side, it didn't change our expenses. If we had half the attendance, we just, lost half of our revenue. That's all.
Yeah. Do you see people, that you think have kind of gone digital as a result of COVID that aren't going to come back? Or are you kind of seeing that to kind of starting to get normalized as well?
Well, I wouldn't say gone digital. One thing that I feared, and I did see somewhat, I think a lot of this is returning because of almost what we talked about with the trips and things like that. And that was some things that have come back. I've seen more lodges returning that kind of stepped away. But it's not necessarily digital. It's just your marketing campaign. Whatever it might be that you choose to market, you need to stick with it for a little while. I mean, I tell anybody, especially a lodge, you need to attend the show for 3 years to see your ROI. Because the first year you show up, it doesn't matter if you've been in business for 30 years as an outfitter or a lodge. Let's just pick, Alaska. You've had a lodge there for 30 years. If it's the first time that you attend our Atlantis show, it's going to be an advantage that you tell people that you've been in business for 30 years. They're going to have more faith in you. But if you look at it realistically, how many people have, $7 to 10 grand for an Alaska trip to throw down one weekend because they're just there and they met someone and they liked them, and also the time. Most people have their time, their vacation, and their money booked for the next year. they're looking at places for maybe the following year, and they're there having the exact communications that we talked about with the outfitter that they'd already booked with, and dialing in their trip. I mean, I spent time, when I did get free times at the show, I knew that I was doing this trip with Set last year, and I was talking with them at the shows, getting the details. Okay, what do I need to, get ready this year? What flies do I need? What gear do I need? And, maybe even shopping for it at the shows. Great opportunity to tie that all together, and you can find the stuff that you need because you can literally bring it over to them and be like, does this look good? Yeah, that's great. And then you can make the purchase. But the average person doesn't have that open. So, they're meeting you. They might walk by and see a cool picture of like a golden dorado and be like, I've never seen that fish before. What is that? And then it's like in the back of their mind. And the next year they come talk to you a little more seriously. And then by year 3, the money is saved up and the schedule is booked and they're booking the trip. And that's just, like most of the people listening, I'm like, yeah, that's my schedule. I can't do anything much faster than that. Especially if you tie in availability of a outfitter, because, you may have a vacation in, whatever month, like maybe you could go in November, but they're booked up fully this year. So you can't go this November. So you add all that stuff together. It takes a couple of years to really, make the bookings. And for, a good outfitter, they know that. And the good outfitters are the ones that are booked in advance. So you see when you walk to the show and they tell you, well, we're taking bookings for, this year, 2025. And they're like, we're taking bookings for 2026 or 2027. It's because they're, that's how they operate and they understand it, and they're booked in advance, and that's how they can do quality trips. They've probably been at the shows for years. So you got to get on the list and get your stuff taken care of in advance, and you'll have a great experience with those guys.
Yeah, it's interesting because I talk to people about it all the time, and I think it's not an either or thing. I think it's an and thing. I think you need to have an in-person marketing campaign as well as a digital campaign.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing come back. The people are realizing, like, look, there's no more proven sales technique than in person. Nothing has existed for longer than face-to-face sales. Even if we go back to when it wasn't called a sale and it was just a barter, and we didn't even have, transactions. That has been existing for that long. Digital stuff is still evolving. It's so new that it's still evolving. I mean, for me, I call it a necessary evil. It's more work that I have to do to achieve the same goals. Sometimes, and some things can do very well digitally, but they can fluctuate a lot. They're like, let's just say, for digital sales for hard goods, or even worse, soft goods. Most people are not shopping soft goods like a shirt for full retail price online. You're going to look for a sale, and then the next sale comes up, and there's very little loyalty to brand loyalty when it comes to digital stuff. It's the next thing that pops up that it's in your feed that catches your eye. So, but if you go face to face and you make a friend, like I was saying, like you make a friend with an outfitter before you ever go. You've talked to him for 3 years at the shows, and you're like, I like this guy. I consider him my friend. You're going to book with him, and you're going to go back, and or you're going to shop from that guy that makes, a reel that you like because you feel like you have a friend at the company because you've met them and you shook their hands and you realize, like, whatever it might have been that you grew up fishing some of the similar waters, or, they fished your home river before and you hit it off. So there's more loyalty that comes out of face-to-face interactions. There's nobody that's listening that isn't loyal to some sort of business, whether it's their favorite restaurant or their favorite brand. And it's more to it than just the actual product. Every brand in fly fishing is marketing, not their product. They're marketing the lifestyle and what we do as fly anglers, and what brings us together. That's what they market, and that's what we are all about. That's what the show is about, bringing everybody together. And, some of our oldest and most loyal customers, as far as just attendees, what they come for is exactly that. They want to come see people. They don't even talk, like, I know them now, and, they come to the show and they're like, I'll look for something new. I'll book a trip. I'll do something here. But the main reason I come is to see all these people that I've met over the years.
Yeah. It's, I always tell people it's kind of like Woodstock for fly fishermen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, like literally like, sometimes on opening day, there's a line of traffic down the road and people trying to get in, and they're anxious. And I mean, back in history, we actually had to change the hours of our Somerset show back when Edison was in Somerset, because the lobby got so full of people that there was no room. It was just basically a stampede. We had to open the doors before it was scheduled to open, because there was no room for people. And so the next year we were like, well, we're going to have to just open an hour earlier and kind of keep it quiet, and so we can deal with the crowd. And that's super fun part about it. But when with the branding, to answer your question through that stuff, is just, my worry was that people, because they couldn't do our events, they needed to do something. And if they committed their dollars to something else, they just may not have had the dollars to work with us. And I did see that in some cases. But like I said, most people are returning to the fact that they're like, this is a critical part. We've been around and proven for our events, as well as, just like I say, the face-to-face sales, for longer than the internet has existed. So, as far as digital sales, it's just an additional way to stay in touch with your customers. But most good exhibitors that are at our event are building their online presence through meeting people at the shows. They sign up for their list, and those customers that sign up for someone's list at our events are already a better customer, because they're choosing to sign up for your mailing list rather than you just acquiring their name through some means in there, like spam, and delete their contact info, which you can't get back then.
Yeah. And so, for folks that may not know, right, you start in Marlborough in mid-January and you end in Lancaster in mid-March. So you want to kind of walk people through the calendar. I know you were saying too that, you've lost some of your more flexible venues. So sometimes the order changes a little bit, right?
Yeah. I mean, the order changes a little. We try to avoid that as best as possible. So sometimes people get upset with that, but it's a little beyond our control. Ideally, we would love the same weekend every year. It's so much easier on our side. Like I said, where it switches around, and I can't get the same dates for any venue for some reason, whether it be a remodel or things that people don't even know about, it immediately adds a month to two more work on my calendar, which is just like picking up an extra job for 2 months without getting any extra pay. So, it's challenging, and we try our hardest, because we know that people like those same dates and keep it in their calendar, but keep up to speed. We always will, announce those dates as soon as we can. But yeah, we start in Marlborough, January 17th through 19th. Then we go to Edison, New Jersey, the following weekend, the 24th to 26th, and then Atlanta, January 31st through February 2nd. That was a 2-day event, and it's expanded to 3 days. Was that last year? I believe was the first year with 3 days. And that one is back growing leaps and bounds, because it was a new event only on its third year when COVID hit. So it's really kind of, it took a little effort to rebound it, and it's been sold out now for some time as far as exhibitor space, and will be the biggest that it's ever been this year. We returned last year to Bellevue, Washington, February 15th and 16th this next year. Then we go to Denver, February 21st, 23rd, which the last 2 years, I mean, this is some shakeup from COVID and part of it is because of the size of the venue that we moved into, but it's taken over the lead for the largest event in the world the last 2 years, just by a little bit over Edison. So we hope to see all our Edison people get back into the event and see if we can't rally and keep those two fighting for the title of the largest show in the world. After that, we go back to California for February 28th through March 2nd in Pleasanton, and then finish in Lancaster, PA, March 15th and 16th, which is a fantastic event and one of our favorites, not only because it wraps up the season, but it's just a really nice town to be in to finish up. Not the biggest, but many exhibitors' favorites.
Yeah, and it's super cool, right? Because you got the convention center built onto the hotel, so it's about as self-contained as it possibly could be.
Yeah. It's, I tell people for that one, I'm like, for exhibitors, if they're asking about, I'm like, look, you could walk to your booth from your hotel room in your socks if you wanted.
Yeah. So I also know that you kind of have something new every year. You're trying to kind of work into the shows. Is there something new for 2025 you want to share with folks?
Well, new is challenging to kind of like pinpoint for our events, because when I do something, it takes, when you're only open 2 or 3 days for the year, when I do something new, it really takes 3 years to kind of get out there. So one, I appreciate you asking because that helps accelerate that. But it's still like, we started a new women's event in Lancaster this past year, and it went over very well. And we've just actually posted online under, if you look under our special events tab under the Lancaster show, we've got information on our women's networking social, and that's on Saturday, and it's a super fun event. You do have to register in advance, and that's still new. Last year was basically a test run, so I would call that new this year, and a super fun event for the women involved in the show. And that went over really well. So we're looking forward to that really being an official thing this year. There's always new speakers at every show, whether it be a featured speaker or destination theater. We always have new people presenting. We have Christopher Rounds, who came to 1 or 2 shows last year over from Europe as a casting demo. I literally was looking at an email from him just before you rang me, and he's going to be doing more shows, and he was really, really liked by the crowd last year. So a casting professional that not everybody knows in the States, but he's not worth missing. Really entertaining and a fantastic presenter. I would put him up there with the likes of Simon Gosworth as far as an instructor. Very, very good with the crowd and professional and entertaining. It makes you laugh and makes you learn. So that's the ultimate. Let's see, off the top of my head, we're going to have some new things. We're talking. We're going to add some industry talks at Denver and Edison. That's new, and these industry talks are going to be open to the public. So, it might be something on digital marketing. It might be something on just how to build your brand, or how to get into industry or insurance or whatever it might be for the fly fishing industry. But we're going to have that open to the public because I get people at our events all the time. Every year I have several people, and they're like, hey, I've got this idea, or I'm opening a new shop, or I'm opening a new lodge, or I just started guiding. How do I get involved in the event? And if we have these things, these talks that are helping people like this, and it's someone that just has an idea in their mind, they may be able to attend a talk that's more industry oriented and business oriented, but they're going to get a head start. It's going to help them get started in the industry, or it simply might be something, how to better merchandise, and they may have a completely different retail store, and you're like, hey, why don't I go to this event? It's free, and I'm here at the show. and they go in and watch for a little while and they get some points. It helps their business. It has nothing to do with fly fishing. So that's going to be a whole new category that we're adding to our theaters in Denver and Edison. So that's going to be kind of a exciting new category that we're going to use to help to give value to our exhibitors, because now they can come and not only make sales and profit for their business, but improve their business.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense too, with AFTA kind of moving away from their trade show to give that same type of educational experience kind of on your platform to exhibitors, right?
Yeah, and the added benefit is that, most consumers have no idea who AFTA is because it's a trade organization, or those new business, guys that I was just talking about where they have an idea. They're not going to find out about AFTA until they've been in the industry. So this gives them an opportunity to learn, and AFTA will be at a number of our shows, so they can benefit by talking with them and attending some of these seminars and get an earlier start. So it's a similar kind of idea and concept, but open to the general public, so we can reach more people.
Yeah. And so for our listeners who, haven't had a chance to attend one of your shows, you want to give them a little bit of a feel kind of for the general format?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's similar to any public convention, whether it's just something that you've been to, like a consumer event where you have booths and exhibitors. And I do get this question a lot. So that's really a great question for someone that, takes it for granted, because you're familiar with it. But, you walk into the show and you're going to be immediately overwhelmed, because there's always more than anybody expects the first time, because if you have attended events in fly fishing, it's probably smaller local events that you can see in a couple of hours. You can't see all of our event in the whole weekend. It's just not possible, because we have so many talks and so many presentations and so much going on that you can't even see all of it in a weekend. So the best thing to do is look at the schedule of events, plan out talks or presentations that you want to see, and make sure you put those on your calendar, which is still going to be a challenge to attend. I mean, I always have hey, I want to attend this one seminar today. And then, for me, I'm working, but even if I'm not, I end up talking to someone and enjoying myself. And I'm like, oh crap, I just missed the presentation I wanted to see because I was looking at this cool new product and I didn't even realize. So you try to attend the events that you want to see, as far as like the theaters. And in the theaters, we have our featured seminars that are more educational and informative, done by, top of the line professionals like Gary Borger, or mentioned Christopher for the casting and things like that. So you can see these professionals and you get to see them one-on-one and even interact or ask questions afterwards. So way better than just seeing even their own videos and things like that. Then we have Destination Theater that there's still educational or informative talks in that format, but it's based on most of the talks are, you might go see a talk on fishing in Alaska or British Columbia or Argentina or wherever it is, and you can go see a presentation. You may even go see the presentation because you talked with an outfitter and they're like, well, I'm giving a presentation in an hour that will answer all these questions you're asking me with photos. So you can go see the presentation and it gets you amped up. I went to see the talks by Seth while I was at the show because it just got me excited for something that I have planned already. And, it gets people very excited. Like all of us, working or not, we go into it and it's like this event in the off season for fishing in most places. And you walk out more excited for the season. You're like excited for your new gear. You're excited for a new species. You're excited for your trip. You're excited for your local waters more than you would be normally. So that's really the best thing that you can get out of it is it hypes you up for the upcoming year. You get to shop around. There's continuous demonstrations by fly tires. We also have featured fly tires. But there's fly tire, we call sort of fly tires row in the show. And there's a bunch of fly tires demonstrating all the time. And whether whether you're a fly tyer or not, they're one of our favorite things to see. You can always learn something. Or if you're not a fly tyer, it might spark your interest or just make you appreciate more what you're tying on the end of the line, or learn about it a little more and how they work, so you can make a better selection. Testing rods and product, it's the best opportunity for that, because shops are limited in the brands they can carry, whether it's because of competition or square footage or whatever it is. It gives you the opportunity to test almost any rod, all in the same venue, all in our casting ponds. We'll have, depending on the size of the venue, there's 1 or 2 casting ponds that you can practice your casting with an expert, get some tips, or you can test products so you can, get a chance to see what the rod feels like before you make a purchase, and compare stuff while talking to possibly the rod designer, or at the very least, someone from that company. And, I get a lot of customers that say, well, they really love that because they don't feel like there's any sales pressure behind it. Even if your salesman at your local shop is giving you the absolute best advice, the customer feels like in the back of their mind, well, maybe if they sell this brand, they're getting a better margin, or there's some sales incentive. In even if that's not the case, when you talk to a manufacturer, they're just telling you about their brand. I mean, there's no sales incentive for them to tell you what the design is or why to choose their rod. They're just telling you about their rod. And then you go to the next booth and you talk about that brand. And you can choose based off of the best rod, or you can choose off of the one that you end up making friends with. And, it's kind of a neat process. So overall, that's basically the gist. And then there's special events like we just hit on that, you can look under our events. We have a film festival, the International Fly Fishing Film Festival, every Friday night. So that gives customers a reason to stay overnight. All of our shows have a discounted rate that's open to the public for the hotels. So you can make a weekend of it, which is really a kind of a cool thing, because, you can go to the film festival, you can have dinner, and it's late. You may not want to drive home, or you can have some, a couple of cocktails and hang out. But the cool thing is that when customers stay at the hotel, and I mean, you have experienced this, you've met friends that like you start talking to someone and you don't even realize it might be Bob Clouser or Jeff Curry, or someone that you idolize in the fly fishing world, and you're standing there talking to them at dinner, and you're like, wow, this is awesome. So you get to hang out with these guys after hours and make friends with them. And it's really kind of a special thing to do that, and just sort of mingle, because we do hang out. Like everybody hangs out at the hotel. We don't disperse. I mean, people will go out for business dinners and things like that, but everybody's sort of mingling. So it's a very fun crowd to hang out with.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It reminds me of back when the show was in Winston-Salem, buying Joe Humphreys a beer and a hamburger, and I think he's my friend for life now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but
that's awesome.
Yeah, but one of the other things too is, particularly now that the website's been revamped for a few years, on the vendor front, you can get just as much information as you can about all of the talks and classes, because one of the things I always do is go look at the floor plan and find the vendors that I want to go see. So I make sure I have that list with me, when I go into the show.
Yeah, find the ones that you want to go see. But one of the things that's like special about the show is the things that you don't know you want to see, because there's something you may have never heard about that could be, it could be life-changing for you. I mean, it could be like, I've literally had customers that came in and bought some little, knot tying gadget, and they're like, this changed my world because, my vision was going bad because I'm getting older or whatever it is. And I can tie my knots so much easier with this tool now that it changed my fishing. I have more fun, and that's, those guys are so happy to bring that to them. Or just some information that makes them more successful for fishing. So, there's great things that you can find by searching, and you should, like if you have a list, a lot of guys do those things like that first day. And then maybe day 2, they focus on seminars. And then day 3, they try to find stuff that they don't know about. And that's why I say, like, you can't see it all in the day. I mean, by all means, if you can only come for a couple hours and that's all you can make, it's worth it. And just be a little more focused, have that plan. But if you can make it for the whole day, that's going to be a good experience. If you can make it for multiple days, you're going to really come out, a better angler and more excited. There's no doubt you're going to find stuff.
Yeah, and I always tell people too that, if you can do the multi-day thing and you want to have more in-depth conversation is, make that introduction on a Friday or Saturday, but Sundays are a great time to be able to spend more time with whoever it is you want to spend time with, tires or vendors or manufacturers, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I literally do that on my side. The Sunday is the day that I go around and try to, check in with vendors and stuff like that. Because, Sundays are always the slowest day in any kind of event you have, unless it's like the NFL because it's on Sunday. But in that, and that's a factor with some of our shows. If we run into bad luck where there's a home team and a playoff game in the middle of the day on, Sunday, it's going to hurt our attendance, and there's not much we can do about that. But most of the time, there's some vendors that have the game on at the show. And, I always tell people, I'm like, hey, the customers that are here today are more serious because they're choosing to be here over watching the game. So, they're more serious customers. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. Because Saturday can be a hustle and bustle. A funny thing with just like the psychology of people, I've seen multiple times in several of our shows where Saturdays get so busy that a bunch of people all tell me, they're like, this is too busy. I'm going to take Friday off of work and I'm going to come in Friday to beat the crowds. And everybody does it. And then next year, Friday is busier than Saturday. And it's just funny how it works like that.
Yeah. That's why you got to make a weekend out of it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, before I let you get on with your day and make the magic happen for us in 2025, I can't let you go without asking you for an updated ski report.
I haven't even got to go. My kiddo went on Sunday and said it was pretty good. While I was in Argentina, we got a big snowstorm where it snowed over 2 feet in one day. So I'm actually still in the process of shoveling out from that since I got back, and plan to get going soon. But it's, a good start for the season, and hopefully we'll have good skiing this year. And I hope I get some time to enjoy that because I don't get much wintertime fishing in. It's talking fishing, but it keeps me excited and get out to get some fresh air by going skiing. And, I appreciate you asking that. But we'll have a good season either way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the last time we spoke, you were worried about where the good line was going to fall and if it was going to cover Crested Butte or not.
Oh yeah, we must have had a storm tracking in, and yeah, I mean that's always the talk for us because we fall into a funny place as far as La Nina and El Nino, where we are in sort of south central Colorado, because the track can hit us or it can go north of us, or it can hit us or it can go south of us, because they tend to track one way or another, and we're kind of like right on the edge. So one cycle can be good for us, but so can the other cycle, and it just kind of depends on whether that track hits us or not.
Well, I hope you get more snow, and we won't say anything about the Penn State game last weekend. So,
I watched it the night before last when I got back. I tried to keep everybody I was telling everybody, don't say anything about the football. We'll watch it. It was a good game either way, but there were some poor calls that I felt could have changed the game, and that was unfortunate for such a big game. But it was a pretty exciting and good game. Should have been Penn State that won.
Yeah, there you go. And so if folks want to find out more about the Fly Fishing Show, follow you guys on social media, purchase tickets, and sign up for classes, Ben, where should they go?
Yeah, just go to flyfishingshow.com and then go to your show, choose your show location off of that. We did miss when we were talking about the general overlay, the show you mentioned, the classes just now, but we also have private classes with limited attendance for each, whether it's your topic that you're interested in or just this, the speaker. Like we actually have at this time with the age of Joe Humphreys, we just do coffee with Joe. And I mean, he's such a character. It's just fun to hang out with him. So you can't even miss that opportunity if you get a chance to sit down at a table with a limited group of people that, depending on what the subject is, it's usually like 8 to 15 people. It includes your pass to the show for the day. So you can get to do, private casting with Gary Borger, or, have coffee with Joe, or you learn about still waters with Phil Raleigh, or whatever it might be. And then attend the show as well. So those are a unique opportunity and actually a huge value. The people that attend those usually book a class every year because they see the value in it. Every year they're doing a different class, maybe even the same class year to year, because they get so much out of it and they realize they change and they're, so personalized. They can come back the next year with questions on what they learned the year before. So that's a pretty unique item that we have in the shows. And if you can register for those you want to do in advance. Those, obviously something that has a maximum of 8 students can sell out pretty quickly. We have people that are sort of waiting for those to even appear online to register. Some will even email us in advance asking to, see if they can reserve some space in it before they're even posted to public. So you want to be on top of those. You can buy your tickets in advance. I have 4 film festival tickets are a good thing to get in advance. And planning your schedule. But, I just hope everybody can attend and, make some plans the most time that you can get, work it out. Hotel links are all on the site if you do want to join us for film festival and festivities afterwards. So it's all open to the public and everything should be on there. If you can't find anything, we're always open to help guide people through. I mean, that's the benefit of that. We are a small business. I answer, or one of my staff members answers every email that comes in from anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ben, I appreciate you taking an hour out of your workday to talk to me, and it's been fun. And good luck, kind of, with the holidays and getting the Canon primed for 2025. And I'll see you in Denver. Yeah,
and don't forget, for all your people, you can come see Marvin out there speaking for us as well.
Awesome. Well, listen, take care.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed the interview as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Don't forget to check out Trout Routes Pro at maps.troutroutes.com. Use ARTFLY20, ARTFLY20, all one word, to get 20% off of your membership. Tight lines, everybody.